They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I never believed that until the day my own granddaughter looked me in the eye and called me a pathetic old fool in front of her friends. My name is Arthur Pembroke, I'm 73 years old, and this is the story of how I taught my granddaughter the most important lesson of her entitled life. It started on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. The autumn leaves were turning gold and crimson outside my study window, and I was feeling rather pleased with myself. I'd spent 3 months working on a special birthday gift for Madison, my only granddaughter. She was turning 22, fresh out of college, and convinced she knew everything about the world. I'd written her a book. Not just any book, mind you, but a collection of stories from our family's history, carefully researched and beautifully bound. Inside were tales of her great-great-grandfather who survived the Depression, her grandmother who worked as a codebreaker during the war, and dozens of other ancestors who'd overcome impossible odds. Each story contained a lesson, a piece of wisdom I hoped would guide her through life. I'd included personal letters, old photographs I'd painstakingly restored, and my own commentary connecting these historical figures to the challenges she might face in her generation. The leather binding alone had cost me $400, and I'd commissioned a local artist to illustrate key moments. It was, without false modesty, a masterpiece of family legacy. Madison's birthday party was at her parents' house, my daughter Caroline's McMansion in the suburbs. The place always made me uncomfortable with its stark white walls and modern art that looked like someone had sneezed paint onto canvas. But I went, gift in hand, eager to see Madison's face light up when she opened it. The party was crowded with Madison's friends, all of them glued to their phones, barely acknowledging my arrival. I found Madison in the kitchen, surrounded by a gaggle of young women in expensive athleisure wear, all sipping champagne and laughing at something on someone's phone screen. "Madison, sweetheart," I said, approaching with my carefully wrapped package. "Happy birthday." She glanced up, and I saw the flash of annoyance in her eyes before she masked it with a plastic smile. "Oh, Grandpa." "Hi. Thanks." She took the package without really looking at it and set it on the counter behind her, immediately turning back to her friends. "Aren't you going to open it?" I asked, feeling the first sting of rejection. "Later, Grandpa. We're kind of in the middle of something." I stood there for a moment, invisible, as the girls resumed their conversation about some influencer's scandal. I retreated to the living room, telling myself she was just busy, that she'd open it later and appreciate it then. An hour passed. Then 2. I watched as Madison opened gift after gift from her friends, designer handbags, expensive jewelry, gift cards to trendy restaurants. Each one was met with squeals of delight and effusive thanks. My gift remained on the kitchen counter, forgotten. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself back in the kitchen, staring at that wrapped package. Madison's friend Brittany, or maybe it was Bethany, stumbled in looking for more wine. "Is that yours?" she asked, pointing at my gift. "It's for Madison," I replied. "I'm her grandfather." "Oh, cute!" She picked it up, feeling its weight. "Feels like a book or something." Madison walked in at that moment with 2 of her other friends. Bethany held up the package. "Maddie, you never opened your grandpa's gift." Madison's eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite read. Irritation? Embarrassment? Oh, right. That. She took the package from her friend and began unwrapping it with all the enthusiasm of someone defusing a bomb. When she saw the leather-bound book, she opened it briefly, flipping through a few pages without really looking at them. "It's a book about dead people," she said flatly. "It's your family history," I corrected, stepping forward. "I spent months—" "Grandpa, I don't really have time to read some old stories right now. I'm trying to launch my influencer career. I need to focus on building my brand, not dwelling on the past." Her friends giggled. One of them, a rail-thin blonde, leaned over to look. "Oh my God, is that handwritten? How vintage!" "It's handcrafted," I said, my voice tighter than I intended. "Each story is carefully researched. Your great-great-grandfather survived. Survived boring me to death? Madison interrupted, and her friends erupted in laughter. Something cold settled in my chest. I looked at my granddaughter, this young woman I'd held as a baby, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose tears I'd dried, and I saw a stranger. A cruel stranger. Madison, that's disrespectful, I said quietly. What's disrespectful is expecting me to be excited about a homework assignment for my birthday, she shot back. Did you seriously think I wanted to read about people who died before I was born? I'd barely have time to scroll through Instagram, let alone read some depressing family memoir. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you right now, I said, and I regretted it immediately. Madison's face flushed red. Well, Grandma's dead too, so I guess I won't lose sleep over it. And you know what, Grandpa? I'm tired of you acting like your generation has all the answers. You don't get it. The world has changed. Your stories? They're irrelevant. You're irrelevant. The room fell silent. Even her friends looked uncomfortable. I spent 3 months on that, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Then you wasted 3 months. Honestly, Grandpa, it's kind of pathetic how you keep trying to stay involved in my life. I'm an adult now. I don't need a babysitter or some old man telling me stories about the good old days. Maybe it's time you accepted that nobody cares about your dusty old memories. She tossed the book onto the counter, where it landed with a heavy thud, and turned back to her friends. Come on, let's go take selfies by the pool. The lighting is perfect right now. They left, their laughter echoing down the hallway. I stood alone in that sterile kitchen, staring at my gift lying discarded like trash on the granite countertop. I'm not a man prone to tears, but I felt them burning behind my eyes. Not because of the wasted time or money, but because I just realized that my granddaughter, the little girl who'd once insisted I read her bedtime stories every night, had become someone I didn't recognize. Someone callous and cruel, with no respect for family or sacrifice. I picked up the book, cradled it in my hands, and walked out of that house. I didn't say goodbye. Nobody noticed me leave. That night, lying in bed in my small apartment, I made a decision. Madison thought I was irrelevant? Pathetic? A relic of a bygone era with nothing to offer? I would show her exactly how relevant one old man could be. I would teach her a lesson about respect, about family, and about the consequences of cruelty. I would have my revenge. You might think that at 73, a man's capacity for scheming would be diminished. You would be wrong. Age brings patience, perspective, and a certain freedom that comes from knowing your time is limited. I had nothing to lose and everything to prove. The morning after Madison's party, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and a blank notebook. Sun streamed through the window of my modest apartment, illuminating dust motes in the air. This apartment had been my home for 5 years, ever since Martha died and I'd sold the family house. It was small, but it was mine, and it contained something far more valuable than square footage: clarity. I began to write. First, I needed to understand my opponent. Madison fancied herself an influencer, which as far as I could tell meant she took photographs of herself and posted them online for strangers to admire. She had, according to her Instagram profile, yes, I knew how to use social media. Being old doesn't mean being stupid, approximately 53,000 followers. She posted pictures of herself in exotic locations, expensive restaurants, and designer clothes, always with captions about living your best life and manifesting abundance. But here's what I'd learned from my years as an accountant before I retired: follow the money. Those expensive clothes? Her parents bought them. Those exotic vacations? Paid for by my daughter Caroline and her hedge fund husband, Richard. That luxury apartment in the city? Subsidized by the bank of Mom and Dad. Madison's entire influencer career was built on a foundation of family money, yet she had the audacity to call me irrelevant. I spent a week doing research. I created fake social media accounts to follow Madison and her friends. I learned the language of their world. Engagement, brand partnerships, authentic content, aesthetic. I studied how influencers built their followings, what made content go viral, what scandals could destroy a carefully crafted image overnight. I also did something more traditional. I called in favors. When you've lived 73 years, you accumulate a network of people who owe you something. That lawyer whose daughter I tutored in mathematics? He provided some useful information about contracts. My old friend Gerald, who'd worked in public relations before he retired? He explained exactly how to craft a narrative that would capture public attention. Most importantly, I contacted my daughter Caroline and her husband Richard. We needed to have a serious conversation about their daughter's behavior and their role in enabling it. The meeting took place at a restaurant downtown, a place quiet enough for serious discussion. Caroline arrived looking nervous, Richard beside her in his usual uniform of expensive suit and perpetual phone checking. "Dad, what's this about?" Caroline asked after we'd ordered. "You sounded so serious on the phone." "It's about Madison," I said. "And it's about the kind of person you're raising." Richard looked up from his phone, irritated. "Arthur, if this is about her birthday party, Madison already told us there was a misunderstanding." "There was no misunderstanding," I interrupted. "Your daughter called me pathetic, said I was irrelevant, and threw away a gift I spent 3 months creating. In front of her friends. Without a shred of remorse." Caroline's face crumpled. "Dad, she's young. She didn't mean. She meant every word. And you know what? I don't entirely blame her. I blame you." That got their attention. Richard's jaw tightened, but I continued before he could speak. "You've given that girl everything she's ever wanted without making her work for any of it. You've taught her that money grows on trees, that respect is optional, and that family only matters when it's convenient. You're funding her entire lifestyle while she plays pretend on the internet, and you've created a monster." "That's harsh, Dad," Caroline said, but her voice was uncertain. "Is it? When was the last time Madison had to face a real consequence for her actions? When was the last time she had to struggle, to earn something, to learn that the world doesn't revolve around her?" The table fell silent. Richard finally put down his phone. "What do you want us to do?" he asked. "I want you to trust me," I said. "I'm going to teach Madison a lesson. It won't be comfortable for any of us, but it's necessary. And I need you both to support me, even when she comes crying to you about how mean Grandpa is being." "What kind of lesson?" Caroline asked warily. I smiled. "The kind that sticks. Over the next few weeks, I put my plan into motion." It required patience, precision, and a willingness to play the long game. Madison thought she was a master of social media? I would show her what real strategy looked like. Phase 1 was simple. I became Madison's biggest fan. I created a new Instagram account under my own name, complete with a profile picture and a bio that identified me as Madison's grandfather. I followed her and began commenting on every single post. Not with criticism or anger, but with enthusiastic, embarrassing grandfather comments. "Looking beautiful, sweetheart. But is that skirt a bit short?" On a photo of her in a cocktail dress. "So proud of my granddaughter. She gets her good looks from her grandmother's side of the family." On a selfie. "Madison, please call your grandfather. I want to make sure you're eating enough vegetables. You look thin." On a post from a beach vacation. Her friends found it hilarious. Her followers found it endearing. Madison found it mortifying. Within days, she'd blocked me. But I'd expected that. I created another account. Then another. Each time she blocked me, I returned with a slightly different username, but the same enthusiastic grandfather energy. Phase 2 involved her parents. True to their word, Caroline and Richard implemented my plan. They called Madison in for a family meeting, and explained that they'd been doing some thinking about her future. They were so proud of her influencer career, they said, that they wanted her to prove she could make it on her own. Starting immediately, they would be reducing her monthly allowance by 75%. The luxury apartment? She could keep it, but she'd need to cover half the rent herself. The credit cards? Limit reduced to essentials only. According to Caroline, Madison had responded exactly as predicted, with tears, accusations of betrayal, and threats to cut them out of her life. But my daughter and son-in-law held firm. If Madison wanted to be treated like an adult, she needed to act like one. Phase 3 was where things got interesting. I reached out to several brands that Madison had been trying to partner with for sponsorships. Using my network, I made some connections and had some conversations. I didn't sabotage her directly, that would be too obvious. Instead, I simply made sure that the right people knew certain facts, that Madison's engagement was largely bought through her family's money, that her lifestyle wasn't sustainable without parental funding, that her brand was built on a foundation of privilege rather than authentic struggle. In the influencer world, authenticity is currency. And Madison's currency was revealed to be counterfeit. But the crown jewel of my plan, Phase 4, required something more elaborate. I needed to create content that would go viral, that would capture public attention, and that would reframe the narrative around respect, family, and gratitude. I spent weeks writing and refining. I reached out to my old friend Marcus, who'd become a documentary filmmaker after retiring from his career as a television producer. I showed him the family history book I'd created for Madison and told him the whole story of what had happened at her birthday party. Marcus was appalled. But more than that, he was inspired. "Arthur," he said, "this is a story people need to hear. Let me help you tell it." Together, we crafted a video essay about the gift I'd made, intercutting footage of me discussing the family history with photographs and documents from the book itself. We talked about the hours of research, the personal significance of each story, and the love that had gone into creating it. We showed the craftsmanship, the attention to detail, the historical significance. And then, in the final 5 minutes of the 20-minute video, we showed what had happened at the birthday party. We didn't use footage, we didn't need it. I simply sat in front of the camera and described, in painful detail, how Madison had reacted. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. The truth was damning enough. "I'm not sharing this story for sympathy," I said to the camera, "but because I think it represents something larger. We live in an age where everything is disposable, where history is boring, where the sacrifices of previous generations are dismissed as irrelevant. My granddaughter called me pathetic for trying to connect her to her roots. Maybe I am pathetic. Or maybe we've created a generation that's lost touch with what really matters." Marcus titled the video, "A Grandfather's Gift, What We Lose When We Forget Our History." He posted it to YouTube, and we shared it across various social media platforms. Then we waited. The video exploded. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed 2 million times. Within a week, 10 million. The comments section became a battleground of generational warfare, with older viewers sharing their own stories of being dismissed by younger family members, and younger viewers split between defending Madison and condemning her behavior. News outlets picked up the story. "Grandfather's Heartbreaking Gift Rejection Goes Viral," read the headline on NBC. "Is this the most entitled Gen Z ever?" asked Fox News. "A family divided, when generational gaps become chasms," philosophized The Atlantic. I gave interviews. I appeared on morning shows. I maintained a perfect tone of sadness rather than anger, of confusion rather than condemnation. I never said Madison was a bad person. I simply expressed disappointment, and wondered aloud where we'd failed as a family to instill values of respect and gratitude. The court of public opinion was swift and merciless. Madison's Instagram comments became a war zone. For every supportive message from her existing followers, there were 10 from strangers calling her spoiled, entitled, ungrateful. People found old posts and recontextualized them through the lens of privilege. "That beach vacation? Must be nice when grandpa's crying over your rejection and you're sipping cocktails in Cabo. That designer handbag? Maybe spend less on bags and more on gratitude lessons." Her follower count, once a source of pride, became a liability. It started dropping. 53,000 became 50,000. Then 45,000. Brands that had been considering partnerships quietly ghosted her. The influencer community, always sensitive to public perception, distanced themselves. Madison tried to respond. She posted a carefully crafted apology on Instagram, explaining that there had been a miscommunication and that she loved her grandfather very much. But it rang hollow, especially when people noted that she still hadn't actually read the book or acknowledged its contents in any meaningful way. She tried posting a photo of herself with the book, captioning it, "Taking time to appreciate family history #blessed." But internet sleuths noticed the bookmark was on page 3, suggesting she'd barely cracked it open. The mockery intensified. Caroline called me, crying, "Dad, you need to stop this. Madison is devastated. She's getting death threats. People are showing up at her apartment building. This has gone too far." "Has she apologized to me?" I asked. "A real apology, not a social media performance?" Silence. "I didn't think so. Dad, please. She's my daughter. Your granddaughter." And she called me pathetic. I reminded her. She said I was irrelevant. She threw away 3 months of work without a second thought. "Did you call her and tell her she'd gone too far? Did you demand she apologize?" More silence. "I love Madison," I continued, my voice softening. "But loving someone means not letting them become their worst self. Right now, she's learning a valuable lesson: actions have consequences. The sooner she truly understands that, the sooner this ends." Richard called next. He was less emotional, more pragmatic. "Arthur, I understand what you're trying to do, but you're destroying her career before it even starts. Her prospects are ruined." "Her prospects were always ruined," I replied. "They were built on a foundation of family money and unearned privilege. I'm actually doing her a favor. Now she has a chance to build something real. By humiliating her publicly? By showing her the truth." The influencer bubble was always going to burst, Richard. I just accelerated the timeline. As the weeks passed, I watched Madison's carefully constructed world crumble. Her influencer friends, sensing a toxic brand association, stopped including her in their group posts. The invitations to events dried up. Her engagement rates plummeted. The lifestyle she'd taken for granted became unsustainable, especially with her parents' reduced financial support. According to Caroline, Madison spent most of her days in her apartment, scrolling through comments and crying. Part of me felt terrible. Part of me remembered the look on her face when she'd called me pathetic. But I wasn't a complete monster. I had an endgame in mind, a path to redemption. I just needed Madison to be ready for it. The turning point came 6 weeks after the video went viral. Madison showed up at my apartment unannounced. I answered the door to find her standing in the hallway, no makeup, hair in a messy ponytail, wearing sweatpants and a hoodie. She looked younger than her 22 years, and exhausted. "Grandpa," she said, her voice small. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside and let her enter. She stood in my small living room, looking around at the modest furniture, the walls covered with family photographs, the bookshelves crammed with volumes on history and genealogy. "I read the book," she said finally. "The whole thing. It took me 3 days." I waited. "I didn't understand," she continued, her voice cracking. "I didn't understand what you were trying to give me. I thought it was just old stories, boring history stuff. But it's not. It's everything." She pulled the leather-bound book from her bag. It was worn now, dog-eared and annotated. I could see sticky notes protruding from its pages. "Great-great-grandpa Thomas didn't just survive the Depression," she said, opening to a marked page. "He lost everything, had to rebuild from nothing, and still managed to keep his family together and send his kids to school. Grandma Eleanor wasn't just a codebreaker. She was one of the first women in her field, working 18-hour days while dealing with men who thought she didn't belong there." Tears were streaming down her face now. "And you," she said, looking at me directly. "You included a story about when you worked 3 jobs to put Mom through college when Grandma Martha got sick. You never told me that. Mom never told me that. I never knew you struggled." I thought everything had always been easy for everyone. She sank onto my couch, clutching the book. I've been so stupid, Grandpa. So selfish and blind and stupid. I thought I was self-made, but I've never made anything myself. I thought I was building something real, but it was all fake. The followers, the likes, the comments, none of it meant anything. And the one real thing, the one gift that actually mattered, I threw away without even looking at it. Madison. I started, but she held up her hand. Let me finish. Please. She took a shuddering breath. I called you pathetic. I called you irrelevant. I said nobody cared about your memories. But the truth is, I'm the pathetic one. I'm the irrelevant one. Everything I thought mattered, my follower count, my aesthetic, my brand, it's all gone now. And good. I deserve to lose it. She looked up at me, and I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. Not the performative regret of her Instagram apology, but real, painful understanding. I'm sorry, Grandpa. I'm so sorry. Not because I got caught or because people are mad at me, but because I hurt you. You spent 3 months creating something beautiful for me, something meaningful, and I treated you, like garbage. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I can. But I want to try. I sat down beside her on the couch. You just did. What? Fix it. You read the book. You understood what it meant. You came here to apologize, not because you want your followers back, but because you hurt someone you love. That's how you fix it. She leaned against me, and I put my arm around her the way I used to when she was little and had nightmares. I ruined everything. She whispered. No, I said firmly. You lost things that were never real to begin with. Now you have a chance to build something that is. We sat there for a long time, grandfather and granddaughter, surrounded by the ghosts of family history and the weight of hard lessons learned. The next phase of my plan wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reconstruction. Over the following weeks, Madison became a regular visitor to my apartment. She'd come over after her shifts at the coffee shop where she'd gotten a job to help cover her expenses. We'd sit at my kitchen table, and she'd ask questions about the stories in the book. Who was this person? What happened after that? How did they find the strength to keep going? I'd tell her everything I knew, and often I'd pull out additional documents and photographs I hadn't included in the book. We'd spend hours diving into family archives, and I watched as Madison developed a genuine fascination with her heritage. Why didn't anyone tell me these stories before? She asked one evening, poring over letters from her great-grandmother during World War II. We tried, I said gently. But you weren't ready to hear them. You were too busy looking forward to look back. She nodded, accepting the truth of it. I want to do something with this, Grandpa. I want to share these stories in a way that matters. What do you have in mind? I don't know yet. But not like before. Not the fake, shallow stuff. Something real. I smiled. Then let's figure it out together. What emerged over the next several months was unexpected. Madison proposed creating a documentary series about ordinary families' extraordinary histories. She would interview people, help them research their genealogy, and tell their stories in a way that honored both the past and the present. I want to show people what I learned, she explained. That history isn't boring or irrelevant. That every family has incredible stories if you just take the time to look. That the past shapes who we are, and forgetting it means losing part of ourselves. She asked me to be her partner in the project, using my research skills and historical knowledge. I agreed immediately. We started small, with a YouTube channel. Madison used her remaining followers and her knowledge of social media algorithms, but this time in service of something meaningful. The first episode was about our own family, openly discussing both the beautiful stories in the book and the painful story of how she'd initially rejected it. I was wrong, she said directly to the camera. I thought I was too important, too modern, too busy for the past. But the truth is, I was just ignorant. My grandfather tried to give me a priceless gift, and I threw it back in his face. This channel is my apology. Not just to him, but to everyone whose stories deserve to be heard and honored. The response was overwhelming. People who had condemned her during the viral storm now applauded her growth. Families reached out asking her to help them discover their own histories. Slowly, painfully, Madison rebuilt her online presence, but this time on a foundation of substance rather than superficiality. The project grew. We brought in historians, genealogists, and documentarians. Madison proved to have a natural talent for interviewing people and drawing out their stories. She approached each family with the respect and curiosity she'd initially denied her own heritage. 1 year after that disastrous birthday party, Madison's channel had 500,000 subscribers. But unlike her previous follower count, these were people genuinely engaged with the content, sharing their own family stories in the comments, and thanking her for inspiring them to connect with their roots. Brands did reach out, but Madison was selective now. She only accepted partnerships with companies aligned with her mission: genealogy services, historical societies, educational platforms. The money was less than what she dreamed of as a lifestyle influencer, but it was earned honestly. More importantly, she was happy. I could see it in her eyes when she talked about the project, in the enthusiasm with which she approached each new family's story. She'd found purpose. But there was still one more piece of my plan to execute. Madison's 23rd birthday arrived on a crisp September afternoon, exactly 1 year after the incident that had changed everything. This time, the party was at my apartment, a small gathering of family and a few of Madison's genuine friends, people who'd stuck by her through the public humiliation and supported her transformation. Caroline and Richard were there, proud of their daughter in a way they'd never been when she was just posting selfies. Marcus, my filmmaker friend, came too, along with several people who'd worked on Madison's documentary series. When it was time for gifts, Madison opened each one with genuine appreciation, thanking the giver and actually engaging with what she'd received. Books, mostly, and research materials, and a professional-grade microphone for interviews. Then I handed her a wrapped package, similar in size to the one I'd given her the previous year. She took it with trembling hands, her eyes filling with tears. "Grandpa, I don't deserve." "Open it," I said simply. She carefully unwrapped it to reveal another leather-bound book, this one with her name embossed in gold on the cover. She opened it, confused, and found that the pages were blank. "I don't understand," she said. "Last year, I gave you our family's past," I explained. "This year, I'm giving you its future. This is for you to fill with your stories. The families you help, the histories you uncover, the lessons you learn. You're not just carrying our legacy forward, Madison. You're creating your own." She burst into tears and threw her arms around me. "Thank you, Grandpa. For everything. For the gift, for the lesson, even for the revenge. I needed all of it." "It was never really about revenge," I admitted, holding her tight. "It was about teaching you to see beyond yourself. You just needed the lesson delivered with enough impact to actually penetrate." "Well, it worked." She laughed through her tears. "You broke me down and built me back up. That's pretty epic for a so-called irrelevant old man." The party continued around us, but I felt a deep sense of completion. My plan had worked better than I'd imagined. I hadn't just taught Madison a lesson about respect, I'd helped her find her purpose. In the weeks that followed, something else happened that I hadn't anticipated. Madison's story of transformation began inspiring others. Parents reached out, asking for advice on how to instill values in their entitled children. Young people contacted us, admitting they'd been dismissive of their own family histories and wanting to change. The documentary series expanded further. We hired a small team and started accepting more projects than Madison and I could handle alone. The work was fulfilling in a way I hadn't experienced since Martha died. I had purpose again, a reason to get up every morning beyond just existing. One evening, about 6 months after Madison's 23rd birthday, we were working late in the small office we'd rented. Madison was editing footage from an interview, and I was organizing research files. "Grandpa," she said suddenly, Can I ask you something? Of course. Did you plan all of this? Not just the revenge part, but everything that came after? I thought about it carefully. I planned to teach you a lesson. I planned to show you consequences. But the rest? The documentary series, your transformation, finding this purpose? That was all you. I just opened the door. You chose to walk through it. She smiled. You know, in some ways, you did give me the best gift last year. Just not in the way either of us expected. How do you mean? You gave me rock bottom. You showed me what I'd become and forced me to change. The book was incredible, but the real gift was caring enough to not let me continue being a terrible person. You were never a terrible person, I said. Just a lost one. Well, I'm not lost anymore. We returned to our work, comfortable in each other's presence. Through the window, I could see the city lights twinkling in the darkness, and I thought about all the stories still waiting to be told, all the families still searching for their roots. Martha would have been proud. Proud of Madison, yes, but also proud that I'd found a way to turn hurt into something constructive, to transform revenge into redemption. 3 years after that fateful birthday party, Madison's documentary series had become a full-scale production company. We'd expanded to include podcasts, books, and even a television deal. Madison had become a genuine voice in the genealogy and family history community, respected for her thorough research and empathetic interviewing style. More importantly, our relationship had transformed into a true partnership. We worked together daily, and Madison had moved into an apartment in my building so we could be close. The coffee shop job was long gone, replaced by her thriving business, one she'd built through actual work rather than family money and Instagram filters. Caroline and Richard had watched their daughter's transformation with amazement, and I suspect, some relief. They'd learned their own lessons about enabling entitled behavior, and had become more thoughtful parents, setting boundaries and expectations they never enforced before. As for me, at 76 years old, I'd found a second act I never anticipated. I was no longer just Arthur Pembroke, retired accountant and widow. I was a researcher, a storyteller, a guardian of family memories, and most importantly, a grandfather who'd succeeded in passing on something real to the next generation. The original book I'd made for Madison's 22nd birthday held pride of place in our office, displayed in a glass case. Madison had added notes throughout it, connecting the old stories to new ones we'd discovered. It had become a living document, growing as our understanding deepened. Sometimes, when we were working late and the office was quiet, Madison would take it down and page through it. You know what the crazy thing is? She said one night. What's that? If I'd just appreciated this from the beginning, none of the rest would have happened. The public humiliation, losing everything, having to rebuild, I could have avoided all of it. True, I acknowledged. But would you have really understood what you had? Would you have valued it? She considered this. No. Probably not. I needed to lose everything to understand what mattered. Then maybe everything happened exactly as it should. She smiled at me, and in that smile I saw the little girl who'd begged for bedtime stories, the teenager who'd slowly drifted away, the young woman who'd called me pathetic, and finally,